Hello, receiving teachers, receiving students, and 7Es.
Hello, Miss Philip.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, before we go on to our lesson topic for today, we have one recapping exercise that we are going to go through together from the PowerPoint. So we will be giving oral answers, and then we will be cross-checking that with the answers that we have from the PowerPoint. Okay, here I have a diagram of what do we call that diagram? Okay, it is a function machine. Okay, it reads a function machine has an. Let's give our answer in order how you label your function machine. What do we have first in a function machine? Put your hand up. What do those first numbers represent? 1, 2, 3. And the pronumeral x. What do they represent? Win?
+6.
+6. Good try, but I'm looking for another answer. +6 will come later. I said we give our answer in order when you are labeling your function machine. How do you label your function machine? Okay, let's have Nancy.
Input.
Input. Do we all agree we have the input? Okay, numbers 1, 2, 3, and the pronumeral x, they represent the input. Numbers going into the function machine. What do we have in the main part of the function machine? What would be the main part of this function machine as our rule? Ruthie?
+6.
+6. So in the main function machine, you have your function rule that you are going to be using, and it's there. You have to add 6 to the inputs, numbers that are coming into the main part of this function machine. Now, what do we call these numbers out here? John?
Output.
Very good. We have the numbers coming out of the output as our results. So this is just an example of the function machine that we will also be using in our lesson for today. So it's just a recap on what we know about what a function machine is. So let's not confuse ourselves. When I ask you to do some exercise on using a function machine, you should now know what to go under the input, what is supposed to be going on into the main part of the function machine as your function rule and also your output. Also from a function machine, after going through the inputs and also the function rule and the output, what do we call this expression here? Okay, it's an algebraic expression, and it can also be called an equation because there is a equal sign that separates these two expressions here. Y equals x plus 6. So this is called an equation. Okay, let's now move on to our lesson topic for today. It's on functions and rules. Lesson number 95. Okay, to the receiving students, and 7Es, looking up now on the PowerPoint, we have main points that we are going to be using when we are trying to come up with our function rules, functions and our rules. Looking at the first main point, in our lesson for today, we are going to find a simple rule for nth term. 2, we will also express simple function in words. In our lesson for today, we will also be learning on how to write those simple rules and simple functions in different ways. You can write a general rule for a sequence in different ways. Okay, first one we have on the PowerPoint now. Using words, how to write function rules using words. You have the inputs times. The numbers that are in that first point are just an example that will be shown on the chart. Using words, you have to have inputs times 3 minus 1 equals the output. That is one way of writing your function rule. Second one, using algebra. As a mapping, the general rule is n, and you have an arrow, 3n minus 1. Still with the same example as the first one, just how to write that as a mapping diagram when n is the input. Also, you can write your simple sequence as an equation, and that's how to write that. Y equals 3x minus 1, where x is the input and y is the output. Okay, you can see that the numbers are shown there. It is deriving from this function machine here. Okay, as a function machine, when you put in the counter numbers 1, 2, 3, these are the inputs. In the main function machine, you have the function rule times 3, arrow minus 1. Now, how many function machines do we have here? There are 2 function machines, so these are the numbers that I have included in that main point up there on how you can write that using words. The output numbers form a sequence. They come out in a certain way or order. So looking at this one here, we have 2, 5, 8. What can you say about these numbers? Bagley? Can you see a sequence here? 2, 5, 8.
Each time add by 3.
Very good. Each time you add by 3. So there is a sequence here. 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. So that's what it means here. It forms a sequence, so it comes out in a certain order. You can also have this information from a function machine in a table form. So it says here you can put the information in a table, and here is an example of how you can draw your table. You have the first column as your input, 1, 2, 3, and your output, 2, 5, and 8. These numbers here. And also this rule is still applied. Using a algebra as a mapping diagram. This is what you have learned also in your previous lesson. Using a mapping diagram, this is what you should have. What do we call these numbers up here? If you can still remember, what do these numbers up on this number line represent? The input. Very good. What about these numbers here? Okay, they are the output. So when you are using your function rule with the input, and your function rule here is you have to multiply by 3 and you subtract 1. Your arrow should be pointing from your input to your output as your result. So 1 as your input, the output is 2. 2 as your input, the output is 5. 3 as your input, your output would be 8. That is when you are putting your results using a mapping diagram. Okay, the end term of a sequence describes the general rule for the sequence. You find the end term when you input n. Okay, looking up at this example, how you can use it as an equation. Imagine that you don't have any numbers here, 1, 2, 3. Let's have it as letter n. The inputs are the terms, and it can come in as nth term. Times 3, arrow to the next function machine, which is minus 1. Your output should be 3n minus 1. Or, from your previous lesson, you also learned that a pronumeral multiplied by a number, subtract 1, is, we leave out the multiplication sign, we write the number first, then the pronumeral minus 1. So this is how the expression can be written. 3n minus 1, instead of having it as n times 3 minus 1. Any question? Okay, we will continue. We have one learning activity there that we are going to go through it together first. It says find the missing function and express the general rule as we have the inputs 1, 2, 3. We don't know what the function rule is from the main function machine. The outputs are also shown there. Who can tell us what would be the main function of the machine? Daryl?
+6.
Okay, from the main function machine we have +6 as our function rule. And you have the outputs there. So 1 plus 6 is 7, 2 plus 6 is 8, 3 plus 6 is 9. The inputs can be represented by letter X, and the outputs are represented by letter Y, or the pronumeral Y. The equation that you can have in terms of X and Y is equals to X plus 6. That's how you can write your equation, and then you substitute your numbers into the equation and you come up with your result for letter Y. Using a mapping diagram, you have the inputs 1, 2, 3. From the diagram now, if I were to draw my arrow from 1, where would I go to? 7. Very good. As our result. How about 2? Input 2, 8. Input 3, 9. So that is when you are trying to put that in a mapping diagram. So don't forget, you have 3 different ways of getting your information from a function machine or using a function machine. You use a function machine, and you can also use it as a table form, and also you can use it as a mapping diagram. And all those can become an equation that you can form. These are information that are derived from the function machine that we have gone through. Outputs goes up in 6, so the rule will include plus 6. That's from the main part of the function machine. So the first term is plus 6. We check with the other terms. We should have n as our input plus 6, the rule. And the functions are, what you have in the main part of the function machine is plus 6. You are adding 6. The mapping diagram, you should have n, an arrow, n plus 6. When you are drawing the diagram, that's what you have in your diagram. The two number lines, the direction of which number from the input to the output. And the equation, as in the terms of x and y equals x plus 6. The same information is also on the chart, so if you are still confused, it will be placed up for you to follow through. Okay, we have our exercise now on the PowerPoint. In these questions, work out the function rule, and also I'd like you to write an equation for y in terms of x. Okay, looking at this function machine, the question mark needs an answer to be replaced. So I'd like you to find the function machine rule, and also you write the equation. I will give you 2 minutes to do that first exercise. I'll collect your book, Thomas.
If looking opposite way. X, y.
Okay, y is the result. So when you have y further down, when you substitute 3 into x, that's the value of y. That's 9. Okay, remember Mr. Dumo taught you something different from here. You leave out the sign.
Okay, should you have any question, do not hesitate to ask if you are still confused.
Okay, I'll collect your books to mark. This is 6, 7, 27. Okay. N term is just an expression that comes in as a rule. So you will see that n term, it will represent like first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so forth. So those are terms like this one here. These are the terms. Yes.
Okay, you should finish your first exercise by now. Okay, let's move on to exercise B. This time you have a function machine, and the same information that you have from the function machine should be transferred into a table. Looking at the table, you have the inputs given, the outputs, some of the answers are left out.
Look at this. Is that how you were taught by Mr. Dumo? pronumeral and then number. What's your equation for this? What's your equation? You can discuss with your friends. Were you taught to have the signs? This is correct, but I'm still looking for another answer to that. What should you do when you are multiplying a pronoun with a number? How do you write it? How do you write it? Letter first and then the number? Can you still remember from your previous teacher? Yes, what's the confusion? Pardon? No, promise. I'll collect your books to mark later. What are you saying here? You did not? Okay, I will come to that when it comes to follow up on Friday. Now we are on something different. I might confuse you. I said I'll collect your books to mark. So keep your answers. I'll mark them. Yes. I will correct this, but I'm looking for another answer to that. Simplify this equation. What do you write first? Letter or number first? Do you include the sign? Okay, let's move on to exercise C. You have your inputs, 1, 2, 3. Your function rule is you are to add 4. I'd like you to work out what would be our outputs as in the terms of letter Y. Then from your function machine, you transfer the information into the table. Be very careful with the Y output from the table. You are to write your equation in there.
Finish.
I'll be collecting your books to mark, brother. How about this one? Continue so that I can mark.
It's second exercise.
Are you multiplying or adding?
Huh?
Are you adding or multiplying? What's your function rule? This is pronumeral. X plus 6 comes out as your result, your output. These numbers are represented by letter X when you are writing your equation. So Y is equal to X plus 6. So if you are substituting, 1 is under X plus 4. And it comes out as your result 5. And that value is represented by the pronumeral Y. Okay, correct. check this one again.
Okay, be very careful. NX and the multiplication sign should be different. One is italic, X, that is the pronumeral, and one is the normal X, where it represents your multiplication sign. Okay, put your hand up if you are about to finish exercise C. Okay, some students have finished. To those others, quickly. Okay, for those students who haven't finished, I will remind you again, do complete that at your own time, because I'll be collecting your books for correction. I'll be checking through what you have written as your answers. So to the receiving students, I'd like you to complete the other exercise for homework, and your teacher can collect them for marking. We will go through the correction to these 3 activities in our next lesson. Okay, we will now go on to our summary for our lesson. We have the 2 summary points now on the PowerPoint. The end term of a sequence describes the general rule for the sequence. That is your first summary point. The second summary point, an equation links 2 or more expressions using an equal sign. So when you see an equation written or an expression written with an equal sign, then you should know that it's an equation that links 2 or more expressions. So these are the 2 summary points. I'll give you 2 minutes to quickly copy those 2 summary points into your books. You should have complete writing those 2 summary points. Do not train yourself to write word by word. At least you read the sentence and then you write the sentence down. Okay, let's move on to our key phrase for our lesson for today. Our key phrase is function machine rules and equation. To the receiving teacher, our next lesson topic is using symbols. That is lesson number 96. Materials that we would need for the particular lesson: worksheet, A4 papers, pen or pencil, and rulers. With that, 70s and receiving students, thank you for your participation.